This webinar is the 6th in a series of webinars on the evaluation process. If you haven't already, you might like to go back and watch our earlier webinars. You might also like to download or print a copy of the handout from our website, which has the key information from this webinar to save you from having to take lots of notes. This webinar will cover quantitative and qualitative data, some of the methods you can use to collect your data, evaluation designs, and finally a brief overview of sampling methods. I will start by explaining what information you will need before you can start evaluating your project. Firstly, if you haven't already, you will need to make sure that you have set clear aims and objectives that you want to achieve by delivering your intervention. It is also recommended that you develop a logic model to plan out how your intervention will achieve your aims and objectives. You should review your aims, objectives and logic model and have a copy of them in front of you before you begin to choose your methods and create questions to ask respondents. It might be tempting to just quickly choose a method and get the questions down on paper, but you will need to resist this temptation. This is because without clear aims and objectives, your questions are likely to be of poor quality and will not necessarily gather the data you need, meaning you could have to design your methods and questions all over again. Now that you know what you will need to begin evaluating your project, I will talk you through what qualitative and quantitative data is. Qualitative evaluation focuses on quality and is most useful when you want to get really in-depth information from your evaluation. This kind of data can be used to indicate why something is happening, getting the information behind the numbers. However, this kind of data usually comes from a small group of people and should not be used when you need larger numbers of people to take part in your evaluation. Quantitative evaluation measures quantities. You would use a method that produces this kind of data if you are looking to put a number on something. Although this kind of research does tend to collect data from larger numbers of people, there is still a relatively small number of people taking part. This means that you will need to make sure that enough people contribute to the evaluation to ensure that it produces meaningful results. Ideally, you should try and collect both qualitative and quantitative data in your evaluation. However, due to time and budget constraints, you might decide that you need to focus on one kind of data more than the other. If this is the case, you will need to weigh up a couple of factors. The first thing to think about is the kind of evaluation you are carrying out. You will need to consider whether you are trying to improve the delivery of your intervention or whether you are trying to prove that the intervention is effective. If you are looking to improve the delivery of your intervention, it might be best to use qualitative methods because this will allow you to get at the kind of detail you will need to know how to best improve. If you are looking to measure the effectiveness of something, it will be better to use quantitative methods because you will then be able to put a number on just how effective something is. The final factor you will need to consider is time. Typically, quantitative methods such as questionnaires will include asking people a number of short closed-ended questions, where the respondent will have to choose their answer from a predefined list set by the researcher. However, qualitative methods often consist of a smaller group being asked in-depth questions, where the respondent can answer in their own words. This is likely to take more time for the respondents and will take a lot more time for you to analyse. You will need to weigh up whether the respondents would be willing to take part in a more time-consuming process and whether you have time to analyse the data. Once you have decided what kind of data you would like to collect, you should begin to think about the methods you would like to use to collect your data. The first method I will talk about is interviews, which is a common method of collecting data for evaluation projects. Interviews typically include an interviewer asking a number of open-ended questions so that those being interviewed can provide in-depth detail. The interview will often be based on a number of key topic areas, but based on responses the interviewer can probe for more information. They can also vary in levels of structure, such as semi-structured or unstructured interviews. There are a number of ways of doing interviews, such as one-to-one or in a small group known as a focus group. Focus groups tend to use a guide with a general structure of open-ended questions to be asked to a group of 4 to 12 people to examine their attitudes and opinions. For more information on interviews and focus groups, including strengths and weaknesses of these methods, the recruitment of respondents and ethics you will need to consider, you can view the Doing Your Interviews and Focus Groups webinar or visit the Help and Guidance section of our website. Another method you could use to collect your data is observation. Observation can be used to assess the delivery or impact of an intervention. This can involve a member of an evaluation team taking part in the activity and making notes, or the intervention could be recorded using video. Observation can be carried out in two ways: overtly with people's knowledge, or covertly without telling participants about the presence or role of the observer or the use of video. However, covert observation does have ethical implications, as people are unaware that they are being observed and therefore have not given their consent. Another method that could be used to collect data is the analysis of existing documents. It is likely that you will have reviewed some existing documents before starting to plan your intervention. However, document analysis is a critical analysis of documentation rather than a simple review of documents. Documents could include reports on interventions, minutes of meetings, correspondence, mission statements, and training materials. For more information on observations and the analysis of existing documents, you can visit the Help and Guidance page of our website. The final method of data collection I will cover is questionnaires and surveys. Questionnaires tend to consist of closed-ended questions. Respondents answer these questions by ticking an answer from a predefined list of answer options. Questionnaires are usually self-completed and can be conducted either online or on paper. However, some surveys are interviewer-led. These kinds of surveys can be conducted face-to-face or over the phone. These are generally used if the survey has more open-ended questions. For more information on carrying out questionnaires and for guidance on how to write questions to use in your questionnaire, watch our surveys and question writing webinar or visit the Help and Guidance section of our website. It is also worth thinking about getting some before data, known as baseline data. For example, if one of the objectives of your intervention is to increase knowledge of vehicle checks by 20% within 6 months of attending the workshop, you will need to know what the respondents knew before they attended the workshop. You should never assume that people know nothing. You can still collect baseline data for interventions that are already running by contacting respondents before the next delivery of your intervention. This would include asking respondents some questions and asking them the same questions after the intervention has been delivered. The responses to the questions can then be compared to see if there has been a change in knowledge, attitudes or behaviour. For example, if you delivered a workshop on the dangers of drink driving, you could measure behaviour change by measuring the number of respondents who would drive after consuming one alcoholic drink before they attended the intervention, in comparison to the number who would engage in this practice after the intervention. If you cannot contact respondents before you deliver your intervention, you could use a comparison group instead. A comparison group is a group of individuals similar to those who are taking part in your intervention. As the group that attends your intervention and the comparison group are likely to be similar, you can use the comparison group as a form of before data because they will not have received the intervention. Once you have chosen the method that you will use to collect your data, you can consider which evaluation design you would like to use. Evaluation designs provide a structure to the evaluation, setting out at what time points the evaluation should be conducted and who with. There are lots of types of designs, but I will briefly outline the three main types. The first kind of evaluation design you could use is an experiment. These designs are the strongest, but they are also the most time-consuming and expensive, meaning you are likely to need the assistance of an external evaluator to carry out an evaluation of this type. This type of evaluation requires two groups. One group that is exposed to the intervention, known as the intervention group, and one group who are not, known as the control group. This design is viewed as experimental because the participants are randomly allocated to the intervention group or to the control group. Although this might be the most robust method, it is unlikely to be doable in the case of a road safety education programme. This is because groups, schools and individuals tend to decide whether they would like to take part in the intervention or not, making randomly assigning individuals to intervention and control groups quite difficult. However, if you have the resources to carry out an experiment and you would like to do so, you can visit our website for more information. The next type of evaluation design you could use is a quasi-experiment. Quasi-experiments can be a good compromise between experiments and non-experiments. This is because they are more robust than non-experiments, but they are less time-consuming and expensive than an experiment. Like experiments, there is a group who receives the intervention and a group who do not receive the intervention. The difference between quasi-experiments and experiments is that people are not randomly allocated to the intervention group and the control group. It might seem confusing, but it is important to note that the group who do not receive the intervention are known as the comparison group, rather than a control group in quasi-experiments. The final evaluation design I am going to cover is non-experiments. These designs are the least time-consuming and expensive to run, but they are less robust than other designs. As they are less robust, this means that it is more difficult to say whether any changes in attitudes, knowledge or behaviour is due to your road safety intervention and not other external factors. Non-experiments are different to experiments and quasi-experiments because they only include the group who received the intervention. There is no control or comparison group. To find out more about the evaluation designs you can use to carry out your evaluation, you can visit the help and guidance page of our website. Once you have selected a method and evaluation design, you will need to consider who will take part in your evaluation. There are lots of ways that you can select a sample to take part in your evaluation, but it is always useful to select the best sampling method that your budget allows for to get more reliable data. The first thing to consider is who you would like to generalise to, because it is likely that you are interested in more than just the people who participate directly in your evaluation. For example, although you might choose to telephone interview 40 of the 100 people who attended your road safety workshop, you would probably like to be able to generalise to a larger audience than just those 40 people. It can be difficult to know how many people should be taking part in your evaluation project, and ideally it would be helpful to ask for advice from a statistician. However, if this isn't possible, these rough numbers might help. If you are carrying out a questionnaire or survey, you should aim to have at least 50 people take part. But if you are comparing 2 or more different groups, you will need 50 people in each group. For focus groups, you should aim for between 4 and 12 people in each group. You might choose to only do one focus group, but this is fine. This is because qualitative data aims to get a more in-depth understanding and is less concerned with being representative of the general population. As a rule of thumb, you can stop collecting data when the same themes keep coming up over and over again. You could also use an online sample calculator such as this one. Some of the ways you can select a sample of people to take part in your evaluation include random sampling methods. Random sampling is any method where each person in your target population has an equal chance of being selected to take part in your evaluation. However, collecting a random sample can be difficult. For this reason, you might like to use a non-random sampling method. There are also a number of weaker sampling methods that you could use if you do not have the time or resources to use a stronger sampling method. There are lots of different types of sampling methods you can choose from. If you would like more information on specific sampling methods, you can visit the Help and Guidance page of our website. This webinar has covered quantitative and qualitative data, research methods, evaluation designs and sampling methods. If you have any questions on anything that we have covered in this webinar, you can email me at rneedham@rospa.com. I hope you found the webinar useful. There are 10 more webinars on each stage of the evaluation process on the Help and Guidance page of our website.